Then there's Mrs. Polansky.
Okay.
Good to see you.
Welcome, everybody. It's so wonderful to see everyone here at KOH and here on Zoom virtual KOH. This is the third time since the pandemic that we've been able to meet in person at the KOH. We are reopening in the synagogue and we are together. How wonderful it is that we are able to be together again as brothers and sisters. I'd like to give a few thank yous and a quick devar. I'd like to thank the Kashenberg Ostro Hayward Library and Cultural Center for the beauty and the knowledge that they provide through cultural programming and educational programming with the founders Hai Kashenberg, Bill and Shola Ostro, Michael and Millie Hayward. I'd like to thank people who made this program instrumental people in this program. Hai Kashenberg, Dwight Freund, Joanne Freund, Michael Singer, Talia Berger, the staff at MLC, our tech director, Cody Media, and essential to our program, Talia Berger and Stephen Polansky. The three of us put this program together as a partnership that was really, really wonderful. And of course, Caren Rubin, who is our executive director. And so we're talking generally about wills and estates and part of our three-part series of End of Life. And it got me thinking about some essentials of Jewish knowledge, some kernels of Jewish knowledge. Number one, we are commanded to teach our children. In the V'yavta, we learn this after we say the Shema. We're commanded to teach our children in general mitzvot and knowledge, teach them about tefillin, teach them in general. We are commanded in the Talmud to teach our children to swim, but it's not just about swimming. Both things are so they can be self-sufficient and that they can be taken care of after we pass and after we are unable to take care of them. Another way that we could take care of our children and take care of those in the future is through wills and estates, which becomes a sacred and holy thing. You know, I was talking with someone today about learning from our mistakes, and in Jewish history, we find ourselves developing our laws and our cultures to be able to adapt to things. An example of this is in Parshat Pinchas in the Torah, when the daughters of Tzalachad were not able to receive inheritance because they were women. And so they petitioned not only Moses, and they petitioned God to be able to give the inheritance to them, or the money would have been lost out of the family because there were no living male relatives. And it got me to thinking, did they have actual wills and estates back in ancient times? I'm guessing not. I'm guessing that they had a standardized way of handling things and an order of how people received inheritance. So luckily now with the development of more standardized writing in modernity and the ability for us to write down our wishes for when we have passed, we can provide for our children and provide for our communities and provide for our loved ones, provide for organizations that need TLC beyond when we are able to be alive. And so with that, I encourage all of you to write a will and estate, and you'll be learning a little bit about that today through all sorts of wonderful presentations. We welcome David Long from Long-Term Care Insurance and Designated Charities, Carole Herman, Care Facilities and Where to Go for Help, Mitchell Ostwald, speaking on wills and estates as a lawyer. Alan Brodovsky will be presenting over Zoom on the Mosaic Law Congregation Foundation so we can take care of our beloved community after we pass away. Michael Ellison from the Jewish Community Foundation of the West. Is he presenting on Zoom? And Caren Rubin, our executive director, and Dr. Stephen Polansky, Mosaic Law Congregation's Life and Legacy Program. So once again, all the people that I mentioned today who are presenting and all the people that put hard work in, I thank you all. And I'm really looking forward to a beautifully put together presentation. Here's Steve Polansky, who will be giving some more introductions. I can sneak out that way, actually.
And as the cantor mentioned, our first speaker today is David Long. David Long is Senior Vice President of CPS Sacramento Long Insurance Services and also a past president of Mosaic Law Congregation. And he will be talking about long-term insurance. David?
Thank you, Steve. And Cantor Ben. All right, so just a little bit about me. My family has a second generation wholesale brokerage insurance agency, and one of the lines of insurance that we represent is long-term care insurance. I've been in this business in the long-term care insurance business specifically for about 23 years, which is basically spans the duration of what is considered the modern era of long-term care insurance, which means nothing to anybody outside of the insurance business, but that's basically, I've been at it as long as everyone else has. Thank you. So today we only have a few minutes. It's a somewhat complicated concept, but I will give some broad strokes and we can always follow up with questions later in the evening. But I'm going to talk about what long-term care itself is briefly, and then funding long-term care, which primarily would be an insurance topic today, and then and about your plan for long-term care in the future. And then at the end, I'll touch a little bit on life insurance and how it can benefit Mosaic Law. So long-term care itself, what is long-term care? Basically care provided for those who are unable to care for themselves for an extended period of time and need supervision due to a cognitive impairment such as Alzheimer's disease, and or need assistance with activities of daily living. You'll hear activities of daily living is kind of a major topic in the world of long-term care. And just to give you there are 6 that the insurance companies consider to be potential triggers for coverage. And that would be when you need assistance with dressing, eating, bathing, toileting, transferring, and continence. All lovely topics that we all like to talk about at parties. But it's one of those things that happens as you get older. It becomes more difficult to do those things yourself. So first thing I want to kind of go over is misconceptions as far as what you might think will be the best plan to fund your long-term care needs. The first would be paying for it with cash. It certainly is possible if you're wealthy enough to pay for your own care. Not particularly efficient, just due to the fact that insurance is selling money at a discount for a specific cause. So there are, even if you can afford it, it might make more sense for you to have an insurance policy just to leverage the dollars. And then if you get to a certain level of wealth, having to keep money outside of any kind of a trust and liquid in order to fund your long-term care needs could result in an estate tax situation that could be disadvantageous for your overall financial plan. Medicaid, or Medi-Cal as we call it in California, you have to meet certain low income asset qualifications, think it's $2,000 in your checking account, and you get a car and a house, and the rest of it, if you have anything more than that, you're not eligible. So typically the only way you can get care through a Medi-Cal program is in a nursing home, which eliminates the ability to stay at home or live in an assisted living facility. And then of course, Medicare is probably, people that haven't looked into long-term care costs at all, a lot of times believe that their Medicare coverage is going to cover them. For long-term care, that is not the case. Typically, you're only going to have 20 days of coverage when you're recovering from a specific event, and then you're on your own. And then lastly, regular health insurance covers illness and injuries, but not long-term care. Long-term care is specific to needing assistance with those 6 activities of daily living or supervision as a result of a cognitive disorder, and your health insurance simply does not cover that. I'm not going to kill you with dirty statistics or anything, make you scared about it, but I am going to give you a little bit of something. The reality of long-term care. At least 70% of people over the age of 65 will need long-term care services of some form in their life. The average length of long-term care claims that last more than 1 year is 4 years. And the average life expectancy of someone after they're diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease as a senior would be 4 to 8 years. And that is one of the major fears that a lot of people that are looking for long-term care insurance have, is the cognitive disorders, typically as a result of taking care of their own parents. We see that as the real driver in pursuing what kind of coverage. So what is the cost to pay for care? Just to get the sticker shock part of the evening rolling. In Sacramento, the cost of in-home care today would run about $70,000 a year. In 10 years, that's expected to grow to about $96,000. And in 20 years, that would be around $175,000 a year for the cost of a skilled nurse working about 44 hours a week at your home. That's not a skilled nurse, excuse me, that's a licensed home health aide. A skilled nurse would go up from there. Assisted living is $66,000 a year today, goes up to $171,000 in another 20 years. And then if you're in a nursing home, we typically look at a semi-private room cost. Today, that's about $128,000 a year in Sacramento County, and that's expected to go up above $300,000 in another 20 years. So it's not a small amount of money. And what we're concerned about is derailing all your other financial planning you've done up to that point. When you met with your financial advisor and you bought your mutual funds and you funded your IRAs and your 401ks, et cetera, you probably didn't anticipate that retirement income being impacted by a $300,000 or $400,000 claim. Just a couple rough ideas of what it costs with average length of stays on certain maladies. Alzheimer's, $1 million in Sacramento for a 96-month claim. That's what that's based off of. Cancer, 3-year claim, $378,000. Cardiac is an interesting one because that's one of the few areas where people require long-term care where they recover and get off of care. Most of the time you go on claim and you never come off, but cardiac is about a 16-month claim. That's still $168,000 cost. Diabetes can be $500,000. Stroke can be over $200,000. So that gives you a little bit of context of what we're talking about. Now, most people, if not all people, want to stay home. There's no question that the reason people seek out coverage for long-term care is their goal is to stay at home. About 52% of home health care of long-term care takes place in the home, 20% assisted living, and about 28% in nursing homes. Just for hope, 38% of people that go into nursing homes do get out and get to go back home. So what's your plan is kind of the way you got to look at these things. How are you going to take care of the situation? The plans that allow you to remain safe at home for as long as possible while protecting the emotional, physical, and financial well-being of those you love. So how do we keep it from having our children being our caregivers or family, friends, or your spouse even? Well, long-term care insurance is one way to go. There are 4 basic kinds of long-term care insurance, and I'll start with the one that you may be most familiar with, which is traditional long-term care. It's generally going to be a reimbursement plan the way your health insurance, well, not really the way your health insurance works. So you'll get bills, they can set up direct bills. You're not really dealing with paperwork, but you're only being paid for money spent on care in the form of benefit payments. So when you buy long-term care, you're buying a pool of money, and that pool of money is doled out in either a monthly maximum or a daily maximum. So when you buy a policy in Sacramento County right now, a semi-private nursing home would be about $10,500 a month on average. So ideally you would buy a policy that had a maximum monthly benefit of $10,500 or roughly $325 a day. So then you would also have a benefit period associated with that, which you decide on at the time of purchase. So it could be as little as 2 years and as long as unlimited, which is extremely rare and extremely cost inefficient because the carriers do not want to have anything unlimited in the contract. It's very difficult to plan for this in terms of their investments and reserves. So they price it accordingly. Generally, most carriers that are left in the business are doing a 5-year benefit period. And then an elimination period is like a deductible. It's how many days you have to be on care prior to the coverage triggering. Typical time is 90 days. What we do with that is we attempt to put some riders on there so that you have first day coverage when you're at home, and those days of coverage count towards your facility elimination period, so that as long as you are home for 90 days before you need to go to a facility, you will have no deductible. So you're covered from day one that way. That's just, and then the most important factor in long-term care insurance, in my opinion, is an inflation rider, something that keeps up with the rising cost of care. It is currently trending at 3% a year, an increase in cost. And so what we will do is attach a rider to the policy that makes the $10,500 I alluded to earlier grow at that 3% rate. So $10,500 today has the same value in 20 years or whenever it is that you may need the coverage. Some ancillary benefits you'll see that aren't really the primary ones would be shared care, which I believe in. That is when a couple buys, let's say you can't afford a 4-year benefit period, but you can't afford a 2-year benefit period. You can attach something called shared care to the policy, and that allows you to dip into your spouse's benefit pool so that your benefits last longer. And they're designed so that the second spouse still has a minimum amount of coverage, even if you use as much as you can of theirs. It's one way of extending the length of coverage without increasing the cost. So I talked earlier about what it costs to pay for the claims, but what is the insurance cost? Well, the idea is, of course, to save some money, and the sooner you buy it, the better. Ideally, you're, in that 55 to 65 zone, I would say, when you're purchasing your long-term care, because and you can buy it all the way up to age 79. The plan I've been talking about with that, roughly $10,000, that would cost a 55-year-old couple with all the bells and whistles I mentioned with the inflation rider and the shared care, it'd be about $21,000 per year. A lot of people think it's $100 a month, so I like to get that out of the way. It's not $100 a month. It's expensive. Now, does everybody need to have that full belt and suspenders ideal plan? No, a partial amount of that can be equally beneficial. Whatever you can do basically to allow yourself to leverage those dollars to buy more care, the better. So if we went with half of that, let's say you're looking at about half that cost, so about $10,000 a year for a $5,000 policy, a monthly benefit of $5,000. And then if you waited till you're 75 years old just to finish that one with a bang, you would that $10,000 plan would be $53,000 a year instead of $21,000 a year. So there certainly is a cost of waiting. The product is medically underwritten. The way they do that is they do a phone interview and ask you about your health history, and they collect your medical records. And you do have to be able to qualify for it, which is also a reason to get moving when you're younger than later. So that's kind of the basic traditional form of long-term care that operates similarly to the way your health insurance does. And there are 3 other types. One is called asset-based long-term care. And what that is it's actually a life insurance policy that has been designed to do more for you for long-term care insurance than it does on a life insurance basis. The advantage of that is you may have monies that you can move from one pocket to another. For example, you might have a CD or an investment or an annuity that you intend to leave to your heirs. You can roll that directly into an asset-based long-term care product, and if you use it, it's leveraged. So say $100,000 policy could buy you, let's just, if you're 60 years old, let's say $400,000 worth of long-term care coverage. If you don't use it, then your heirs receive a death benefit in the amount that you put in, usually, or a little bit more. And then if you change your mind, most of these products have a return of premium, which is extraordinarily seldomly used. However, it is available, and that does make people feel better about what if I don't use it, or what if I need the money later. Leaves a little more flexibility. It doesn't quite have as many of the smaller bells and whistles, but it does have the inflation rider, which is critical, and it operates similarly with the benefit period lasting 4 years, 5 years, etc. That's one I like. And then one thing I didn't mention about traditional long-term care before is, like health insurance, your rates are subject to potential increases, which some of you may have heard about. If any of you have the PERS plan through the state, you've definitely heard about it. But it is, they didn't know how to price this product for the first 25 years it was available, maybe even the first 40. And so they were required to increase rates in order to keep up with reserves, which on the health insurance side of the coin, people are kind of used to getting increases, but because they kind of pool long-term care with their life insurance, they expect the price to stay level. So those increases have come as a bit of a shock for a lot of people. Well, if you buy an asset-based long-term care product, your rate is guaranteed. There's no chance that it can go up. The third type is where you buy a regular life insurance policy, a permanent life insurance policy like Universal Life, and they put a rider on there where you can get up to 2% of the death benefit per month in long-term care. The advantage of this is if you need life insurance anyway, you're kind of getting two potential benefits out of one policy. And if you don't use it, it pays a death benefit. If you do use it, it's only the amount you use that's deducted from the death benefit. And the rate is also guaranteed. The disadvantage of that particular product is there's no inflation aspect to it. So you have to attempt to anticipate inflation. So average age of claim, I think, is 82. And if I'm working with a 65-year-old, I'll forward 82. I'll look at what the cost should be when they're 82 years old. And you could buy that much. If you can afford it, you can buy the coverage that way. So you'd be overinsured at first, but properly insured at the average age of claim. And then last, if you can't get through underwriting because of medical concerns, there are annuity-based products, which are okay. There's not a lot of leverage in there. However, the one big advantage, because of the Pension Protection Act, you can now roll an annuity, a fixed annuity, directly into a annuity-based long-term care product, or even a standalone long-term care product, the traditional type, if it's a carrier that accepts it and there's no taxable event on the gains on that annuity. So it's kind of like you might be familiar with the 1035 exchange and an insurance product, or you might know like a 1031 in real estate where you get reinvested basically and you don't have to pay the capital gains. The best choice for you is more or less the traditionals, middle income families. That's going to be a good fit for them. If you have an existing life insurance policy with a lot of cash value in it, then the life insurance option might be for you with the long-term care rider. We can also reposition, like I said, one pocket to the other using that asset base. That's kind of who fits in each of the categories. And if you wait too long and you can't get anything, there's a couple strategies you can use, like make sure you insure the healthy spouse. So you're at least preserving as much dollars as you can for the spouse that can't get coverage. But planning ahead, of course, is your best bet. So just to summarize, what's your plan? The best gift you can give your spouse and your children is a written plan to handle your extended care needs. Lay it out in advance, write it down, make sure that the plan is in place and that it can't be impacted by adverse market conditions, and your spouse and children know what to do if and when the time comes that you go and claim. And then you can focus on loving each other and getting along and not being as stressed out as you might be otherwise if you're busy doing all those things. So that's a very broad overview of long-term care. And I'll just spend about a minute on life insurance and how it can relate to the Mosaic Law. Life insurance can be designated not only for your family members and other purposes, business partners, et cetera, but you can make the synagogue your beneficiary. And again, the advantage is we're selling money at a discount. If you wanted to leave the synagogue $100,000, but only had 25,000, maybe you can buy a life insurance policy and leverage those dollars into the amount that you're wishing to do. There are sometimes can be complications with making the synagogue your beneficiary if you don't have a pattern of giving in the past. In other words, an insurable interest. How's the synagogue get hurt by your death? We have to show them that you've been supporting the synagogue while you're living. So therefore, if a death occurs, we can make the synagogue a beneficiary. If not, then an existing life insurance policy, you can designate, change the beneficiary or a portion of it. That's what I did. I took a portion of one of my policies and designated it to the synagogue. So it is one of the least expensive ways to maximize the dollars that you can give the synagogue at death. That's all I got for you. Thank you.
David, that was excellent. Thank you so much. And again, we're going to be taking questions at the very end of all the talks. So our next presenter is Carole Herman. Carole is the founding person and executive director of Foundation Aiding the Elderly, which is a wonderful nonprofit organization that I just recently became aware of. And she is going to talk about the different levels of facilities, services that are available to the elderly. Carole?
Fell over. Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here to the synagogue tonight to address the work that I do. And as Mr. Long told you a little bit about his background, I'll tell you a little bit about my background. In 1982, I had a family member that ended up in a nursing home here in Sacramento. Nobody knew about nursing homes in 1982. It wasn't well publicized and people really avoided anything like that. My aunt was over medicated and fell and broke her hip and ended up in a local nursing home. What happened, not typically, nursing home patients are usually under Medicare, Medi-Cal, as Mr. Long talked about. My aunt was a private pay patient, and my aunt had a lot of family that came to visit her on a daily basis, which a lot of people don't have family members to come and visit them. So we were not the typical nursing home patient's family. We were there every day to see her, and we watched her demise over less than a year because she was not getting the proper care, but nobody really knew much about nursing homes in those days. So we didn't really know what to look for. And when we would ask questions about her care, we were always not told the truth. And my aunt, unfortunately, after less than a year in the nursing home, she was never rehabbed. She was given drugs to control her. And she died from a horrific stage 4 bed sore, which caused her demise. So when that happened, I started looking into long-term care facilities and how they operated and who it was that monitored them so that I could possibly do something about it. I was in the software business at the time. This was not my career path, but because of a family experience, that's how it became my career and my passion for the next 35 years. So I really appreciate what Mr. Long talked about on insurance coverage because it is very expensive. And most people in nursing homes, very few are on private pay because it is so expensive. So it's very important that you do plan. My whole thing is stay out of those facilities the best you can. Take care of yourself, watch what type of medications you're on. As you get older, pay more attention to your health care and your treatment for that health care, and to avoid the falls. A lot of people are ending up in nursing homes because they fall and they break something, and that's where they go to rehab. So if you could take care of yourself to avoid that, that is the best thing to happen. But as we were discussing earlier with the cantor, things have changed now. When I was growing up, our parents, grandparents, we all lived together. We took care of each other. Well, that's not the case anymore. So we have to plan for that. So when I found out about about nursing homes and how they were operating and what happened with my personal family experience, I just felt that this was my calling to do this and to help people that end up in nursing homes or any type of long-term care facility. I'm not going to get into all of that type of work because it's sort of depressing, and I don't want to depress anybody, but there are avenues out there to help people in nursing homes, like my organization, the Foundation Aiding the Elderly. And we work all over the country, and I'm proud to say that we have served close to 9,000 families to date, and we have clients in every state, and some people in Canada and even in Europe. So what I want to talk about is this, and there are pass outs that I left for anybody here in the audience if they want it. And if anybody that's watching through Zoom, they can always contact my office for any type of additional information that they need. There are several types of facilities that one may enter. And the first one is a skilled nursing facility. And all nursing homes in California have to be licensed. So these facilities are licensed by the Department of Public Health. In addition to being licensed, some nursing homes that choose to participate in the Medicare and Medi-Cal program, that is paid for through that system. But as Mr. Long also talked about, it's not for the entire time that you're in the facility. There is a vehicle if you do not agree with Medicare taking away that reimbursement to pay for your care. There is a vehicle that you can use to appeal a Medicare decision. So if you are only in there 20 days, in some cases it'll go to 100 days. There's a way to appeal Medicare not paying for your costs anymore, and we can help you with that too. Not all nursing homes are alike. Some are run for profit, and some are nonprofit facilities. I personally, in my years of experience, have never really seen much of a difference. There are religious nursing homes, there are Catholic nursing homes, there are Jewish homes, there are Presbyterian homes, there are Mormon homes. They all kind of run the same. Medicare uses the term skilled nursing facility for the nursing homes that are certified to receive these types of payments. They're usually for rehab type payments for rehab. But if you don't rehab in a facility and your health does not improve, there is long-term care where you stay there forever. It doesn't always work that way. A lot of the facilities don't have beds for long-term care. And it's, the facilities make their own decisions. If you call and ask if there's a bed available, they're the ones that make the decision whether or not there's a bed available. And basically it's about how are you going to pay for it? And most facilities do not particularly care for Medi-Cal patients because the reimbursement is much lower than it is if it's a private pay or under Medicare. There's also immediate care facilities, and they're at a little bit lower level care for nursing home care. And it's also licensed by the Department of Public Health. It provides inpatient care on a short-term basis. And there are quite a few of those facilities available in the area. Additionally, there's also continuing care retirement communities basically for people that are low income and are on welfare, those types of facility. Then you have a residential care facility and assisted living facilities. The residential care facilities are usually a 6-bed. So they're licensed to only have 6 patients in a facility. And assisted living facilities, most of the assisted living facilities are owned by larger corporations that have, 100 people, 200 people, 40 people. They have much more than a 6-bed. And these facilities are also licensed by the state of California, and they're for persons 60 and older. They provide room and board, housekeeping, supervision, personal care assistance. They are not a medical facility, so they don't provide nursing care. The nursing care comes from outside. The level of care and supervision is for the people who are unable to live by themselves and who do not need 24-hour-a-day nursing home care. So people that live in these residential care facilities, they don't really need the nursing care like nursing facilities, skilled nursing facilities. They are considered non-medical facilities, and they are not required to have nurses, certified nursing aides, doctors on staff. They are usually, well, I would say 99% of the time, they are private pay. So you don't get Medicare or Medi-Cal that will pay for the services for residential care facilities. So basically, the residential care facility operator can really, there's no guidelines of what they can charge like they do in a nursing home if you're under Medicare or if you're private pay. So they can charge whatever the going rate is. And I mean, that's fine as long as they provide the care. They must meet certain standards that are by the state of California, and also by Medicare. And the Department of Social Services is the ones that licenses those types of nursing facilities. And they do have a section in that department where you can file a complaint if you're unhappy with the care that your loved one is getting. But if that is the case, whether it's nursing homes, assisted livings, residential care facilities, if you have a problem with the care in that facility and you file some type of a complaint with the state regulators, you really have to be on top of it. You know, my 35 years of experience has shown that the regulators are not always doing their job and not always investigating like they should. And now it's even worse because the government is just not back to work now. So a lot of the investigators are people that are following up to make sure that our loved ones are getting the proper care. They're not even going to work. And there's really little to no supervision over the people that are supposed to be going into facilities to protect the health and safety of our loved ones. I can go further with that, but I don't want to be the deliverer of doom and gloom. But the one thing that you must do if you ever have a loved one in a facility is that you have to be very, very vigilant. Not everybody in that environment will give the care to your loved ones as you would. So if you're experiencing some odd things, you must report those. And if you don't report it to the state, or if you can't work it out with the facility operator, then my organization could get involved with that to help you make sure that your family member receives the care that they should get. Who pays for those services? Well, obviously, skilled nursing facilities are paid by Medicare for the first portion of your stay there, depending on what the condition is and what your treatment is. And then you either become private pay if you can't pay after that, or you go to Medi-Cal. And like Mr. Long also said, you have to spend down your money, and you can't have more than $2,000 in the bank in order to qualify for Medi-Cal. So that might be a situation where your long-term care insurance would come into play, because privately, if you don't qualify for Medi-Cal and your Medicare is used up, the facilities can charge whatever they want. I've had clients that are paying $20,000 a month for substandard care. So, and I always tell the client that when they're looking for placement, because they'll call my office and they want us to recommend a facility, nursing home, assisted living, whatever. We've taken the position at my organization that we do not recommend any nursing home or any assisted living facility or residential care facility, because we just get all the bad calls. I've never had in 35 years, I've never had a good call from anybody that's had a wonderful experience in a facility. So we always tell the client, we don't recommend the facility, but we will do a background on it. and find out their status and what their past experience has been, because we have data that we can get into the state database to find that out. We will tell them the good and the bad and the ugly about the facility. And then also we strongly urge that if your family member does have to go into some type of a facility that you're not going to be there to take care of them, is that you find a facility that is very easy for you to access. So you don't want a facility that's, you know, on the other side of town. You want a facility that you're going to be able to have quick access to, which doesn't always happen because facilities don't have beds. They have a shortage of beds. So, but it's very important that your family member is in a facility that you have quick access to, because in emergencies, you want to get there quickly. And also, under the federal law, there are no visiting hours in nursing homes. So in other words, the facility will post visiting hours 10 to 8. There are no visiting hours for family members. So I strongly urge people that have to place their loved ones in a skilled facility that they go there anytime, 24/7. Because under the federal law, family members can have access to a facility for 24 hours a day. There are no visiting hours for family members. But people don't know what their rights are. And that's one of the things that my organization also does for the person that's going to be in a facility, is that we tell them what their rights are, because most people don't know and nobody plans for it, especially to enter a nursing home. It's either rehab after some type of surgery, or somebody has fallen and broken a hip, and it's never planned. It's most of the time it's just the hospitals try to get you out as quickly as possible. And I know that that's just the way it is. And I know that Dr. Polansky is here and he was the head of Mercy and all that, but they do. It's all based on the dollar, unfortunately, and they want to get patients in and out as quickly as possible. And nowadays you can't find a bed available sometimes in a hospital either. So they want to get the patient out to a lower level of care, less expensive level of care. And so they will transfer a patient to the facility that has a bed available, not considering that the family might not be able to get there. So what you need to know is that you have a right as a family member to approve placement out of a acute hospital. So in other words, if you're in XYZ acute hospital, and you have to be transferred out, you have the right as a family member to go look at the facility that has a bed available, and it's your decision whether or not your family member, or you place your family member in that facility. I'm finding that there's a lot of people are being trached, and a lot of the nursing homes are not equipped to take care of people that are on ventilators. So now there's something called post-acutes. So you've got a acute hospital, a Mercy, you've got a nursing home over here, and they needed something in between. So now they're popping up now as post-acutes, where they take patients that are trached. The regulations for post-acutes are a little higher. The staffing ratios are a little higher because the person's acuity level is pretty high, so they need better care, more care. So, but since there is a lack of beds available in those types of facility, which are called post-acutes. And if you're a Medicare patient, or I'm sorry, a Medi-Cal patient, under the Patient's Bill of Rights under the state of California, you cannot send a patient to a facility out of a radius of 30 miles from their home. So this is another bit of information that we can provide to the consumer, that all of a sudden we get calls saying, gee, they want to move my mother to Los Angeles because she's trached and we can't find a facility here that has a bed available for somebody who's on a trach. Well, that's where we get involved to advocate for our clients. And I have to, most of the time, get in touch with people, the powers to be at the hospitals, to say you can't send a patient there especially a Medi-Cal patient. They have more rights really than we that are not under Medicare have. And you can't send a patient to a facility 30 miles out of the radius of their home. Because it's very difficult for somebody to go see their mother if she's in Los Angeles and the daughter's living in Sacramento. Just doesn't work out that way. So that's another thing we do is tell everybody what their rights are. Then we have the RCFEs, the 6 beds that are always private pay, unless Medicare will pay for a portion of the cost if the patient is on hospice care. So if the patient has to have hospice care, Medicare will pay that expense of hospice care. Still doesn't pay room and board rate for a residential care facility or an assisted living facility, but they will pay if you're, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. They will pay if Medicare comes in, Medicare will pay if the patient is put on hospice. I'm finding that a lot of places are putting patients on hospice just so they get paid. And usually in the old days, it was, if the doctor thought you were going to pass within 6 months, you could go on hospice. Well, I've had a couple clients that have been on hospice for years. So, I mean, it's just Mark 6, it's what it is. And so anybody who's watching the telecast or people in the audience, I've left my business card and how to get in touch with my organization. We're here to serve. Like I said, we served over 9,000 families. Our services are free. We are a nonprofit. We do take donations. That's how we operate, but our services, we do not charge. We represent a lot of very poor families that end up in these facilities and are very much taken advantage of, in my opinion. But we're there to serve and help you if you do have the need for a long-term care and in a facility, even if it's a short period of time. We're there to help you make sure that your loved one gets the proper care and treatment that they deserve and that they're being very well paid for. And don't think that Medicare or Medi-Cal, especially Medi-Cal, does not pay enough. They do pay enough. Believe me, they pay enough to these facilities. I've never met a poor nursing home operator. Quite the contrary. And I don't care. They can make as much money as they want as long as they provide the proper care. And that's what we all deserve. That's what we all work for. And we certainly don't want to see our parents and ourselves, because I'm certainly senior and worked hard all my life and paid into the system. We want to have good care. That's all we're asking for. So we're there to help whoever wants to call our office for services. And I know there's a couple of people in the audience that we have helped in the past. And I'm very pleased to say that we have. And so I'll be glad to take questions at the end of this session if anybody has any. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
As Carole said, Carole and her husband were very successful business people. And 35 years ago, they formed this organization, which is a not-for-profit. And basically, Carole and her husband are angels among us, because this is a difficult area, and that we will all eventually probably struggle with one way or the other. I doubt that anybody's going to be immune with these issues. And Carole's organization is a great resource, and I really appreciate you being here. And one other thing about just a comment about the hospital and wanting to get you out of the hospital. If you're on Medicare, all Medicare diagnoses fit into what's called DRG, or diagnostic related groups. So the hospital is getting a certain amount of money based on that diagnosis, with certain add-ons possible for your stay. And it's calculated on the average stay for whatever that diagnosis is. And so if your DRG is calculated on a 3-day stay, at day 3, they're anxious to get you out of the hospital, and they're working to do everything they can. Sometimes it's not always appropriate. So you have to be your own advocate, and your family has to be an advocate for what's going on. Don't assume that the doctor is always making the best recommendation. There are a lot of background issues that may come into that recommendation other than what's best for the patient. So our next speaker is Mitch Ostwald. Mitch is the head of Mitchell Ostwald Law Offices and a past president of Mosaic Law Congregation, and he is going to be talking about wills and estates. Thanks, Mitch.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for the nice introduction, past president to past president. Estate planning is that we're going to talk about is very abbreviated tonight, but we're going to cover all the major issues. And we prepared a PowerPoint, which will we've prepared a PowerPoint, which will give you a visual so you don't have to look at me and look at the slides instead. So let's begin. This presentation focuses on estate planning, basic concepts of wealth transfer, wills, and trusts. So what is estate planning? Estate planning is basically taking what you have during your lifetime and transferring it to your family or loved ones, or to Mosaic Law, or anyone for that matter, in an organized fashion. Everyone does it, whether you do it voluntarily through your own planning, or if you don't do it, the courts will do it for you. And that we'll get to as well. It's part of the process that's not just our laws, but it's laws in all this country, including the laws in the UK. The basic premise is that when you die, you cannot continue to own property in your name. So all of what estate planning is getting property from me when I die to my beneficiaries. And there's different ways that we can do it, some more efficiently, some less efficiently. So to whom will you pass your estate? Well, the obvious is your family, but it isn't necessarily limited to your family. It can be to friends. It can be to loved ones. It can also be to charity. It can be to the Life and Living Legacy program that's been set up through Mosaic Law. And you can do it at various times. You can do it during your lifetime. There's an annual gift exclusion of $16,000 per year that you can give to anyone. You can give it to you can give to a charity. There's no limits on the amount you give to a charity. And you can, the other forms, of course, are upon your death, or it can be delayed if you're married till upon your spouse's death. Now, what assets will you pass? All your personal property, your belongings. If you own a home, your real estate, your stocks, securities, your business. What doesn't get passed through estate planning is your 401ks, your retirement, your IRAs. And the reason for that is there's direct beneficiaries. So when you've set up your 401k, they ask you who you're leaving it to. If you're married, it's typically husband to wife, wife to husband, and then you name your children as beneficiaries if you have children. But it doesn't have to be that way. You could leave it to other family members, friends. You could also leave it to a charity. The same would hold true for IRAs. Also, life insurance policies do not go into a trust. If you have a life insurance policy, you have a direct beneficiary. You have somebody that you've named as the beneficiary of your life insurance policy. So that goes outside of your estate. So it's not part of your trust. So there's basically, how do you do your estate planning? Well, there's basically 4 ways to do it. And the default one is the first, joint ownership. So most people, when they do not have any form of estate planning, will set up their home, if they're husband and wife, as joint tenants. Upon the death of the first spouse, The first spouse dies with nothing because joint tenancy is owned 100% undivided. So when I die with nothing, 100% of that house goes to my wife. You could have a piece of property with a brother or a sister. Upon the death of the first, 100%. So that's a form of estate planning. We've accomplished the issue. How do we get property out of our name to our beneficiary? So theoretically, if you had everything in joint tenancy, you could avoid doing any kind of estate planning because you've done it. If I had my house in joint tenancy, if I had my bank accounts in joint tenancy, if I had everything in joint tenancy and I die, everything gets out of my name by operation of law. Now, it's only efficient, perhaps, upon the death of the first spouse. There's limitations, and we'll get to some of those. The second issue is if you do nothing. The law provides that property will get out of your name. If I don't have any estate planning done and I own a piece of property, I have a bank account, it goes into what's called intestate succession, meaning that the probate code, the laws in the state of California will determine who gets it. And it reads like a who's who. Did Mitch have a wife? Yes. Did Mitch have kids? Yes. Did any of them predecease him? No. Whatever the formula is, for every human being in California, the code will prescribe who gets it. Did Mitch have any family? No. Did he have a brother? No. Did he have a sister? No. Did he have nephews? Yes. Okay, there we go. It will work. Unfortunately, intestate succession won't get us to Mosaic law, but that would require planning. The third that we'll talk about is a will, and a will basically is determining who we want our property left to. Upon my death, I leave everything to my spouse. Upon my spouse, if she predeceases me, to my kids. It's a written document and it goes through a process. And the final one is trust, and we'll talk about what the trust does. So we talked already about the joint ownership, so I won't go over that again, but that's basically an undivided interest in the whole. Upon my death, everything in joint tenancy goes to the other joint tenant. The way to think of that also is when you buy a piece of property, your deed typically is in the name of joint tenants, husband and wife as joint tenants. It's kind of a default. And it's a good default because the alternative is tenants in common, which would mean each own a divided 50%. So one of the questions on joint tenants about joint ownership, and we'll talk about the advantages, is we've already gone through those. Let's talk about the disadvantages. Let's say that I had one child and I wanted to name everything as joint tenants. Well, if I put that child on title, they now are owners. And I can't ask them, hey, will you get off title? No, they're now owners. So if you had a dispute, they're on title. Also, one of the benefits under California law is you get a step up in basis upon the death of a owner. If you have it as joint tenants, you still keep the same base. So you don't get that step up in basis. So if the house was sold, so for instance, if you bought a house for 100,000, now it's worth 500,000, you had it as joint tenants with a child, you die, the child now has that house valued at 100. They decide, well, we're going to sell it. There's a capital gains tax based upon that difference between 100 and 500. So you're going to pay an unnecessary tax on $400,000. Runs about 30–35%. Other ways, upon the death of the parent, it's stepped up to now 500. Child decides that they inherit it, they decide to sell it. There's no capital gains tax. So let's go. We talked about intestacy, so I don't think I need to go over that, but any combination could possibly occur. One of the problems, though, to avoid, because people say, well, what do I care? I'm not going to be here. The problem with intestacy is you may end up providing for those you didn't have any intentions of ever wanting to give to. So for instance, we've had cases where we're searching for an heir that had no relationship with the beneficiary. And the only reason that they're participating is because the donor, the holder of the property, didn't do anything during their lifetime. So they could have done better by giving it to something that they were interested in. Mosaic law, perhaps. I have to give the house a little bit of a push, right? So we talked about what will happen. The court does everything. The one thing that will work in a intestacy is every I is dotted, every T is crossed. But it's really an inefficient way to go about estate planning. The next is the wills, and we talked about it just briefly. Upon my death, I leave everything to whomever. It's a written contract between you and your beneficiaries, your loved ones. And the way that it's taken, it's carried out is through a court proceeding. And the part of the courthouse is known as the probate department. And they deal with wills and trusts. Well, primarily with wills. Trusts if they need to, but generally speaking, they don't need to use the courts for a trust. You name who will be the executor, who will be the person who manages your estate. You will determine who you want to leave it to or who you don't want to leave it to. And the court supervises the entire proceeding. So you've got lawyers on representing the estate. You have a judge, you have probate referees. They do everything for you. The problem with a probate proceeding is the expense. And I don't know if I put a slide of that in, but just to give you an idea, if you owned a house and your entire estate was, say, $500,000, the probate fee, the statutory fees are 4% of the first 100,000, 3% of the next 400. So 4,000 plus 3 times 3 is 9. So that's 13,000. I'm sorry, 12, 16,000 times 2. The executor plus the lawyer, so that's 32,000 plus court costs of another, say, 3,000. $35,000 for the luxury of moving that house to your beneficiary if it goes through probate. These are statutory fees, meaning that they are prescribed by statute. That is what the attorneys, what the executor, what the court will be paid. Also, the courts require a probate referee to go out and value the house before the house is sold, which, when you really think about it, is an unnecessary step because you're going to hire a realtor. The realtor is going to get full value for the property. So why do you need to know what the value is when you're going to turn around and sell it? So we talked about what the probate is, and we get to the advantages. And I already told you the biggest advantage is that they dot every I and they cross every T. It absolutely is foolproof. It will get done. But the disadvantages, in my opinion, outweigh it because it takes a long time, even for something as simple as a house being transferred to a beneficiary. It's expensive, which we just talked about. And one of the areas that we now are very concerned about is lack of privacy. I can tell you what Elvis's will looks like. It's a public record. I could tell you pretty much anyone who went through a probate, what their holdings were, what the disposition of their estate was. But here's the privacy issue that's most concerning. In the probate petition, you have to name all of the beneficiaries, even contingent beneficiaries. So let's say that I had a great aunt and she was leaving everything to her daughter. Well, there's a strong possibility as a contingent beneficiary that I could be named. So who wants those names? Who wants that information? It's the same people who call you to tell you your warranty's expired. Probably not that often, but just also the same people who call you with the stock of the day picks. And so I look at it in kind of an overview. Who shouldn't be contacted? And as Jews, we know there's issues of the grieving period of 7 days, 30 days, 1 year. They're calling people at the absolute wrong time. And they're befriending people that, are vulnerable. And so if we can protect that privacy, I think that almost outweighs the expense. So that's the disadvantage of probate. So let's get to the biggest, I would say the biggest bang for the buck, and that's a trust. Lots of different names for trusts: living trust, loving trust, family trust, inter vivos trust, revocable trust. They're all the same. They are revocable trusts, and the root of revocable is revoke, meaning that during our lifetime, we can change, alter, modify the terms of our trust. And why is that important? Well, let's say that one of my daughters, God willing, marries the next Bill Gates. Well, maybe now she doesn't need a part of my estate. So I could change it and shift some of the assets over to the other children. Let's say that there's been an event in the family where that beneficiary wouldn't be a participant. Let's say I went to a life and legacy giving and I was inspired. I got to change my trust. While you're alive, you can change anything. It's very simple. And it's also a very low cost way of keeping things up to date. When does your trust become irrevocable? Upon your death. So if I said I'm leaving everything to the kids and then I die, that's set in stone. It becomes irrevocable. Prior to that, I can change, modify, or alter the terms. We retitle our assets. So instead of just being the owner, now we are the trustees. I am the trustee of my trust. So we retitle the house into the name of the trust. We retitle the brokerage account into the name of the trust. The owner of the corporate business is the trust. So all the assets are in the name of the trust. And why do we want to do that? Well, we name ourselves, and if it's husband and wife, or even if it's just a single person, we are the trustee, but we name a successor trustee. So I say, during my lifetime, I'm the trustee, but if I become ill, if I lack capacity, upon my death, I name Steve Polansky as my successor trustee. By operational law, yeah, Steve becomes the successor trustee. So remember where I started? The whole issue of estate planning is, how do I get the property out of my name to my beneficiaries when I die? Well, I don't need to retitle everything because the trust instrument says, upon my death, distribute everything to my beneficiaries. I'm gone, but Steve is now the trustee. The trust document is our contract, and Steve reads it over and says, okay, this is how Mitch wanted it to go. And he takes care of it all. We don't go to court. It's done in the comfort of your CPA's office and comfort of your lawyer's office with the family. It's not in court, and obviously courts tend to be litigious and not a good spot for spending money or saving money. So that's the beauty of a trust. So I probably talked about some of the advantages. It completely avoids probate, which we just talked about. It saves money, it saves time. Remember, I was talking about the house. If the house is in the trust and I die, and Steve now is the successor trustee and he wants to sell the house, he could do it as soon as some very minimal paperwork is taken care of. It could be sold in a hot market like Sacramento right now in a matter of weeks or months, not years. And we all know from seeing cycles, Real estate doesn't go in one direction. It moves around. And so sometimes time is your friend and sometimes time is your enemy. Also, one of the benefits, and this would hold true even with a will, but right now the federal estate tax exclusion is very high and it will grandfather out in 2026. So a couple has a federal estate tax exemption of over $24 million. Now, the reason I put that in is the issue really for most Americans is not estate taxes, especially right now. The issue for estate planning is, can you do it efficiently? Can you do it in a less expensive way? And can the money that you've built up, your after tax dollars, go to who you want them to go to? Because on that one example I was giving of just the house, the $500,000 house, the question in my mind is, if I could save an extra $35,000, wouldn't I rather it go to the life and legacy program than to Uncle Sam? Haven't they already gotten enough out of me? Why am I paying that extra money just for the sake of not planning? So I'll talk about just charitable remainder trusts for a moment. This is if you wanted to set up something that was directed entirely towards a charity. And this can be set up. It's a specialized trust. Once you set it up, what you've put into it is irrevocable. You can't change that trust, but that is a form of a trust. There's advantages of, it's not part of your estate. So right now with the high federal estate tax exclusions, it's not an issue because when it's been lower, and it's been as low as 250,000 per spouse. So it's been as low as 500,000. So you own a house, you're going to pay estate taxes. They've moved it up over the years to a fairly good level, but it could change. I mean, we hear arguments in government all the time, and we don't know what will happen. It seems like it's safe, but we don't know. I mean, we can't predict. If the government needs tax dollars, they're going to look for ways to find it. And it is easier to take taxes from people after they've died than to take it while they're living. So it is potentially vulnerable. The last two things that I'm going to talk about are powers of attorney, and you've heard about them a little bit, I believe, over the lecture series. There's two powers of attorney, and they're known as durable powers of attorney for healthcare and durable powers of attorney for asset management. Durable is another word for limited. So it's limited to specific purposes. So durable power of attorney for healthcare is your medical healthcare directives. And even though California is a right to die state, it works kind of backwards. If you don't have your medical healthcare directives saying do not keep a person on life support, the default is to keep them on life support. If you have your medical healthcare directives and two independent doctors determine that there is no brainwave activity, you're not going to recover, they will honor your wishes. If you don't have it, it's a much more prolonged procedure. And we all know the famous case in Florida during, I think, Bush II administration that brought this to the forefront of everyone's thinking. And the other is the medical durable power of attorney for asset management. That's kind of the down but not out. I can't go to the bank. Who can transact for me? Who's going to be able to do it? That used to be a major issue when people were going to the banks. It's less so today because most banking is done online. So people could give their login information and sit at a computer next to a family member to take care of it. But again, it's limited for if I'm not able to go to the bank. And at my office, when we do any trust, part and parcel of that is the medical healthcare directives. We do those at the same time. And we also do a will. And people say, well, why do you have a will? It's known as a pour over will. I leave everything to the trust. So in the event, let's say that somebody told me I could open an E-Trade account and get 2 tickets to Hawaii. I write a check, away we go. Terry and I have a ball. And then I come back and realize, oh geez, I never put it into the trust. And then I die. So it's an asset outside of the trust. It's in my name. If the asset is less than $110,000 and not real property greater than 40,000, I can submit an affidavit to the court and said that E-Trade account belongs in the trust. So the beneficiary is the trust. So think of it as pouring over like a pitcher of milk. So the trust, the wills for if it's a couple, husband and wife, and durable powers of attorney for asset management and for healthcare. So you've now gotten an hour lecture in 20 minutes. So I'm happy to have saved you 40 minutes tonight. And Steve, thank you for inviting me.
But I thought my younger daughter was dating Bill Gates. Wait a second, we have to talk about this. Anyway, thank you very, very much. And again, another wonderful resource that we have in our community. I just want to go back to Carole Herman's lecture. And there are, as Carole mentioned, there are some paperwork with her cards here. And we're going to bring some of that paperwork over to the office. So if anybody is not here in person, they can pick up the paperwork in the office. But for those of you here and who are online, the email for Carole's organization is CAROLE@4FATE.org. And I'm going to repeat that again, CAROLE@4FATE.org. And our next speaker is surprisingly, again, another past president of our synagogue, Alan Brodovsky. He's also president of the Mosaic Law Congregation Foundation, and he will be talking about the Mosaic Law Congregation Foundation. And he is on Zoom. And do we have that set up?
Can you hear me? Steve, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. And I guess it's set up. Hi, everybody. I apologize for being on Zoom and not being there. Nancy got back from back east Thursday night and tested positive for COVID. So I didn't think you would all, she's doing fine, but I didn't think anybody would be looking for me to be present in person. So here I am on Zoom. And I've got some good news for everyone to start out with. And that is Steve told me, keep this down to about 5 minutes. So I'm going to do my best to make this like about 5 minutes so that we can get your questions answered about the foundation. The foundation has been in existence for about 30 years. It was started, in fact, I'm proud to say my dad was one of the founders, and it started with the goal of growing so that we could ease the burden of funding our general fund, and possibly even, if we can grow it enough, ease the burden of paying dues to our synagogue. Over the years, it has grown from a very humble beginning to over $1 million. The foundation's principle is protected under our bylaws and cannot be invaded without a supermajority votes, which comes from both the board of directors of the synagogue and the foundation board. So it is protected. It's a special fund It is owned by Mosaic Law, but it's handled by our separate board of the foundation, and it maintains its bank accounts and all of its accounts separately. It provides funding for the general fund by distributing 1/2 of the increase in value to the fund each year to Mosaic Law, with a minimum of 3% and a maximum of 7%. So that's at least under current numbers, about 30,000 a year that's going to the synagogue. So it's not an insignificant number. It also helps the synagogue in that it has provided loans over the years to allow the synagogue to proceed with projects where there's an initial shortage of funds, but long-term, they will take care of the funding either through fundraising or some outside source. Some of the projects it's included, the Shalom School building, this center where the KOH library is located, and more recently, the security improvements that have been made to our campus. The Mosaic Law Foundation is funded by donations from people. They can use any of the vehicles that you heard Mitch talk about earlier. It can be done by a will, it can be done by a trust, and it can also be done through the life and legacy. And we've got to remember that as our synagogue grows and grows older, we are not going to be here in the future to pay the dues that we've been paying to keep the programs going. If the membership stays up, there'll be future generations, but it gets tougher and tougher always to do this. So if we can leave money to the foundation where the money will be there and will be a substitute for some portion of what you have and all of us have been doing for the foundation, it can be a real benefit for the synagogue for future generations. Now, you understand from what Mitch said about charitable giving, and that can be a part of your will or your trust or your life insurance policy, as we talked about earlier as well. But there's also the Life and Legacy program, which I think many of you are familiar with and which you're going to hear more from Michael and Steve and Caren later on. But when a gift is made to the synagogue from a Life and Legacy member, currently 80% is paid to the Jewish Community Foundation of the West. And that money goes in the manner that is prescribed by their bylaws, which you'll hear about from Michael. And 20% of the money goes to our Mosaic Law Foundation, unless, and this is the important unless that each of you really needs to understand, and that is unless the donor in his gift to the synagogue specifies differently. So for example, if I'm a member of Life and Legacy and I leave in my will $10,000 to Mosaic Law, then Mosaic Law will get $2,000 in cash and $8,000 will go to the Jewish Community Foundation of the West in a fund for the benefit of Mosaic Law. So Mosaic Law will get the benefit of that, as you'll hear about. But only 2,000 goes actually to Mosaic Law unless you specify that you want it differently. You could specify in your document where you're giving the money that you want all of it to be in the endowment at the Foundation of the West, or you could specify you want a different percentage, or you could specify you want all of it to go to Mosaic Law. That's your choice. And I think it's very important that each of us knows that that choice is there, and that each of us knows what will happen if we don't make the choice. The default is that 80-20. Now, over the years, the foundation has been funded by many gifts and bequests, and actually even by fundraising, where we've taken a portion of some fundraising events and put the money into the foundation. So this fund has been growing, and if we can grow it sufficiently, we can really help in many, many years for generations to come to help the synagogue. It goes to the general fund, not to a specific fund, so that we, in fact, can pay for the nuts and bolts that everybody would rather see their money go to a speaker or a certain event. This pays the nuts and bolts expenses and pays the utilities that have to be paid. So it's really important that everyone consider the foundation when they are considering their wills, trusts, and other estate planning documents. And when we get to questions, I'll be happy to answer any. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. And I might add again what you referred to early on. This is really a labor of love for the Brodovsky family, because Alan's dad of blessed memory, Lou Brodovsky, organized the fund, and it has been a valuable asset to us when we had special needs where the fund was able to loan the money to the general fund for special projects. And it has been a wonderful asset that we have, and an asset that is growing. Our next speaker is Michael Ellison. Michael Ellison is the relatively new executive director of the Jewish Community Foundation of the West, and he'll be talking about charitable giving to the JCFW. And Michael, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
So I want to thank Steve for the invite, and a very good evening to all. Some of you are familiar faces that I see on Zoom, and I wish I could have been there, but for circumstances, I'm here at home. So I want to apologize for not being there in person. As the new executive director, I started in September of last year, just after the Chagim, after the high holidays. So getting my feet on the ground, and really enjoying working here. And I thank everybody for their attention for the next 5-6 minutes. So Steve, I can't see. Do you have my presentation up?
Yes, it's going up. And Michael, can you adjust your computer, the lower third of your, there we go. Thank
There we
you.
go. Okay.
Yes, it is up.
Okay, great. So I have 2 slides, and I'm going to try to keep it short and sweet. So basically, what do we do at the Jewish Community Foundation of the West? We have 2 primary functions. Our first is to manage the organization and individual funds with our partners, Morgan Stanley, who act as our financial advisors, and they are closely associated with a nonprofit part of Morgan Stanley called Greystone, and we've been with them for about 10 years, and really enjoy their advice, and it's been really a great relationship with them. Our second primary function is to grow nonprofit organizations, just like Mosaic Law, to increase their principles so that we can fund their requirements and needs. Just as Alan mentioned, we have about half a dozen, if not more, Mosaic Law endowments that currently provide every year with a spendable balance of about 4% on average over a 3-year period, a significant amount of money that comes into Mosaic Law from many of the community members that hold endowments with us. How do we achieve this? So we're very fortunate to have a really decent menu of portfolio options. We have a growth fund, we have a balanced fund, we have a short-term fund, a preservation fund, and we introduced recently an ESG balance fund, which is an environmental, social, and governance fund that's starting to take off. And with that, we are adding 2 new funds, an aggressive fund that will sit over and above the current growth fund that we have, and then an ESG balance fund that will complement the current fund that we have at the moment. Also, how do we achieve this? We have a very large and focused investment committee where we have an investment policy strategy. Our executive committee and board take care of how we organize our portfolios. Moving on to the next slide, what do we offer for the community at large and folks like yourself on Zoom and at the presentation? So we decided to have people start up a donor advised fund for only $1,000. The endowments begin at $10,000, and our organization endowment funds also kick off at $10,000, which we call our quasi endowments that operate like an endowment fund but have the operation incentives to be very similar to a donor advised funds. Alan spent a considerable amount of time going over in detail how our Life and Legacy program works. So if we have any questions after the presentations this evening, I can talk a little bit more about the Life and Legacy program. The next part, which is new and you will start to hear very, very shortly, is a women's philanthropy only giving opportunity between the Federation and the Foundation, the Sacramento Federation and ourselves, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with the lines of Judah and the pomegranates. This is a giving that can be done during the course of our lives and then obviously afterwards in a Life and Legacy program. So what can we suggest as you think about your end of life, which all of us have to face at the end of the day? And I'm sure some of you there speak a little bit of Hebrew as I do. So Ad Mei Esrim to 120. So basically opening an endowment or a donor advised fund now is really an opportunity to support Mosaic Law and in turn all your nonprofit organizations of your choice. But especially this evening, I just want to touch on for another just short minute is that our relationship with Mosaic Law goes back many, many, many years. Our past, immediate past president, Mike Singer, as you know, is heavily involved and is super kind and generous in his donations and how he works within the community. And Mosaic Law and the foundation has really worked hand in hand over a lot of years and with a lot of continued support of you people having to open up endowment funds or donor advised funds. This is really going to benefit Mosaic Law in the short term and especially in the long term when most of us are not here to take care of of the synagogue and all the activities that are related to Shalom School and around. So what's next? You can have my email as you see on the presentation. We can set up a meeting and discuss further the options that I provided. And I think basically that's, Steve, that's my 5 minutes in a nutshell. So thank you all. It's been great to have this opportunity, and I really look forward to meeting you all.
Thank you very, very much. I appreciate it, Michael.
Thank you, Steve.
And our final speaker today, what a surprise, is a past president. And also currently, I used to think that being president of this shul, there couldn't be anything more intense than that, but Caren has managed to find that job too, as executive director of Mosaic Law. And Caren's going to be talking about life and legacy.
Does this thing go by itself, Cody? Does this thing go by itself up here? Okay, thanks. So all of you know me, and let me take this public service announcement opportunity to say, please RSVP to the gala. You know who you are. Don't forget to send it in. You can do it online. You can call the office, whatever works for you, please RSVP. And now I'm done for the night. Can I go home? Okay, so I have been blessed because all of our speakers have talked about the Life and Legacy program at Mosaic Law. So my job is relatively easy and hopefully won't take too long. I was co-chairing this program when it began in 2013. I was the immediate past president, and I didn't have anything to do. So they found this for me. Sacramento, you go next slide. Sacramento was fortunate to be in the second cohort of the Life and Legacy nationwide program out of the Harold Grinspoon Foundation. Those of you who have grandchildren may be familiar with the PJ Library. Mr. Grinspoon decided that he needed another project, and he started the Life and Legacy program to encourage giving. And we got wind of it through the JCFW. Hannah Strasser was the ED over there at the time. A bunch of us from the community met, decided that we could and should try and pursue something because we didn't have anything in place. And we were accepted into the second cohort. At one point, there were 12 organizations in the community. Some bowed out for various reasons. We obviously didn't. At the time, Rabbi Taft thought it was imperative that we have a unique moniker to this program. And he devised the Atid Fellowship. Atid in Hebrew means future. Fellowship of our fellow congregants working together for the greater good of the future of Mosaic Law. The logo, just in case anyone needs a trivia at a cocktail party, the logo was designed by Jennifer Saltzman, daughter of Larry and Sharon Saltzman. So there you go. We began our pre-work in 2014. There was a whole bunch of paperwork and milestones that we as an organization had to meet for the entire community to present to the Life and Legacy program in Massachusetts. And we formally launched it at the high holidays in 2014, just before the Yisker speech, when everyone is waiting for that prayer and we're going to have 30 minutes of announcements. And that was when we started it. Go to the next slide. So what were those key elements that we had to figure out? It wasn't, yeah, we're going to do this and we're going to have a cool logo and off we go and we're going to talk to people about it and hope they want to do it. We had to create a management plan, a marketing plan, an implementation plan, and most importantly, a stewardship plan. Why? Because Mr. Grinspoon is insistent that just because you're asking people for money upon their passing, and they may even want to give it to you, you have to thank them when they're alive, because they have the opportunity to change the terms of their trust if you don't do something to continually thank them. So we spent a great deal of time developing a stewardship plan to continually thank our donors. Those of you who are in the program may remember that you get a note sent to you on Passover and just before Rosh Hashanah. Stewardship, right there. Some of you attended a dinner at Rabbi Taft's home during Sukkot a number of years ago. Stewardship. So it is intentional. It is meaningful. We've had a few legacy Shabbatot, and it reached a point now where we have so many people, it's like a regular Shabbat to have all those people up on the bima anyway. So we kind of went a different pattern and are looking at doing other things. So the Atid Fellowship is still functioning, and we are still following many elements of the plans that we created in 2014. Okay, so when we first started this, Steve Polansky said to me, "Your magic number, Caren, is 100." And I said to him, "You're absolutely positively insane." To date, we have 88 participants in the program. I don't know what the other organizations have. I don't particularly care. I'm focused on what we have at Mosaic Law, but we have 88 congregants who have committed to bequeathing Mosaic Law a dollar amount. The program does not have a minimum. The program does not have a maximum. The program is grateful for any dollar amount that people want to give to us. Our criteria are as follows. Please make sure your family is included in your trust. We don't want to be in a tug of war with your third cousin who thought they were getting something and they didn't get written into the trust. It's important for us that you keep control of where you want your money and that you consider Mosaic Law to be a part of that disbursement. The logic being that if it means something to you when you're alive, it should mean even more to you upon your passing so that it stays in Sacramento and continues to be as vibrant as possible. Where the money comes from in terms of the bequest, it can be from the trust itself. It can be from an IRA, your 401k, your life insurance. It could be a percentage of your overall estate, depending on how your estate is structured. It can be a set amount. And we are grateful for any amount. As Alan said, we have a gift policy in place. A bequest that is not directed to a given fund or a given project goes into Mosaic Law. 80% gets sent to the Mosaic Law Endowment Fund at JCFW. 20% is sent to the Mosaic Law Foundation per the gift policy. It's 80-20, unless the deceased has specified it to be a different way. If the deceased has said, "You know what? I'm giving you $10,000. I want it all to go to USY Transportation," we will follow that directive. If the donor says, "You know what? I don't want the endowment fund at JCFW to get anything. I'm giving you $25,000. I want it to go to Mosaic Law Foundation." Okay, we will follow that. All we ask is that you make it very clear so that there's no confusion or disagreements amongst your heirs. You can specify, I'll give you an example. We had a congregant who passed away. She worked for the phone company. She didn't have a big estate. She left us $500 and she targeted it for use for our phone bill. And we were happy to use it that month for the phone bill. It didn't cover much more past that month, but that's what she wanted and that's what we were obligated to follow. So we did. Next slide. I have on the table 2 sheets of paper. One is a letter of intent and one is a letter of confirmation. The letter of intent is a form that you fill out saying you intend to make plans to put Mosaic Law or any other participating organizations into your trust or be a designee for your IRA, your 401k, your life insurance, whatever financial mechanism you want to use for that bequest. You intend to do it. It is not yet done. Now, if you've already done it and we don't know about it, we don't do well with surprises in the office. It's not a good thing at all. There is a document up here called a letter of confirmation. If you've already made the plans and haven't told us yet, tell us. It's not public in the sense of what you're doing. I don't need to know the amounts. Some congregants have said, I want to give enough so that the output from the endowment fund will be my dues, right? So if they're shomrim, they pay $3,600 a year. They're giving enough of a bequest to Mosaic Law that we will get from that one individual $3,600 a year for forever, right? That's something very generous. Not every congregant does that. Whatever the amount is, we are very, very grateful for it. If you've already confirmed the bequest with your trust attorney, with your CPA, please fill out the form. If you're online and you want the form mailed to you or emailed to you, I'll do it tomorrow. Just shoot me an email. It'll be done. We don't do well with surprises. Now, because you're on this Zoom call, because most of you in the room have already participated, Steve Polansky has told me that he's going to be calling each of you about participating in Life and Legacy. And if you don't want to call from Steve Polansky, fill out the form. And if you've already done, and you don't want to talk to Steve, he's like, nope, make him go away, fill out the letter of confirmation. He will never call you about this ever, I promise. And if you don't, if you want more information, more specifics about the program, you can contact Steve, you can contact me, you can contact Caren Polansky. We are happy to answer any of your questions. We are grateful for all of your gifts to Mosaic Law. We want to see it be a vibrant religious institution for many, many years. And one way that we can do that is through your bequest. Thank you. And I'm glad I'm the last.
Caren, thank you again. And I would say I've never seen a harder worker than Caren Rubin, and she's involved in so many projects in so many levels of this the shul, and her family is involved too. And we appreciate all your efforts. And yeah, Caren and I have got to get things going here. Caren has been our scribe, those 100 notes that go out every 6 months. That's Caren's handwriting, because I'm a doctor and you can't read my handwriting, but I'm going to be making the phone calls for sure. And anybody who wants to meet with me, my treat, cup of coffee at Bella Brew or the equivalent, and we will definitely talk. Anyway, I encourage anybody who's on Zoom to send in any questions. And Cody, can we pass around, or Joanne, do you have the microphone? Great. Are there any questions from the audience? And while you're thinking about that, do we have one? Okay, Betsy Singer.
I just want to say thank you to Caren and Steve, because our thank you note just came in the mail yesterday. So thank you. Thank
You're
you
welcome.
for your hard work too. And question for Caren is, how do we find out if we've turned in a letter of the confirmation or whatever that second
I
letter
will
is
be
called?
checking this evening on the list.
Okay, thank you.
Also a question for Carole or for David Long. You mentioned about long-term care and Medi-Cal and getting into facilities, and there's a $2,000 maximum. Can families who don't have a lot of money but exceed the maximum donate to or transfer money over to their family so that they could reach that qualifying level?
I don't know of any regulation, and probably Mitch or might know that as the attorney. I don't know of any qualifications that says that you cannot spend your money the way you want to, as long as it's only $2,000 that you keep in order to qualify for Medi-Cal. Oh, it's a 3-year. I thank you very
Okay.
much. There's a 3-year look back.
Okay, and then the question was for donor advised fund, what is the minimal dispersal? I think that's for Michael Ellison.
Can you just repeat the question, Steve?
For the donor advised fund, what is the minimum dispersal? And I think they're looking for a percentage.
When you make a grant, the minimum amount of money is just $100 when you make a contribution to a charitable organization. And the fund begins with $1,000.
Okay. And let's see. Burl, Michaels, thank you for joining us. And your note didn't come through. Can we put up Burl and you can ask the question directly?
Sure. David, I was wondering, what about long-term care insurance options for those of us well over 70 or 75?
If you are over 75 or if you're over 79, you're no longer eligible for any type of insurance coverage. So we would be looking to leverage savings the best we can, either through an annuity that might offer a little bit of lift on those funds, or simply a savings plan. Yeah, where you're basically looking at investment growth or interest growth in order to optimize your funds. But there aren't going to be any options from an insurance standpoint after age 79. And it's fairly cost prohibitive after age 75.
Thank you, David. Question for Carole. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Great.
For Mitch, is there any retroactive or grandfathering for the 24 million and change? Should that change or should that amount be decreased by the government? If you were to establish a trust today and tomorrow that amount was changed, do you still get the 24 million?
So the way it works is, yes, you could if you file a gift tax return. So let's say that the house in Hawaii, you wanted to give that to your children, and they were changing the value of that 26 million. They were lowering that amount, but you wanted to be able to take advantage of that 24 million. Say it dropped from 24 to 2. And the value of the property was going to put you above that 2 million for federal estate taxes. You could gift the property, file a gift tax return that the CPA would do, and then it would allow you to use whatever portion against that 24 million. So if it was a $4 million property, now the estate has 20 million or 10 each, whatever you do. And I should add that if the laws are changed dramatically in 2026, that will be something people will be doing.
I can just add to that. We are seeing that quite a bit in estate planning on the insurance side, where they may gift half of that 24 million now and save the other 12 for what they anticipate will still be the exemption, so that it's grandfathered in. So you end up getting that full 24 million or whatever it may be, even if they lower it later.
Thank you, guys. Question for Carole Herman. Assisted living, residential care. You said that they didn't they don't provide medical care, but it can be arranged on their own. What does that mean specifically? How is that accomplished?
Well, you have the right to go see your own doctor if you have a problem. That it's just that they don't provide any type of doctors or medical services unless it's under hospice care.
But if you have a doctor that's willing to come to the
Exactly. If you have a doctor that's willing to come to the facility and give you treatment there, or evaluate you there, you have the right you have certain rights, and you have the right to pick your own healthcare provider. And no matter where you are, an assisted living, residential care facility, or a nursing home, you have the right to your own healthcare provider of your choice.
Okay, thank you, Carole. All right, well, that's all the time we have right now, and if you can just bear with me for 3 minutes, I would like to mention a whole bunch of people. And first of all, this program could not have come off without the incredible effort of our cantor Ben Rosner, and Talia Berger, who has been just incredible. She's a fund of knowledge and a fund of energy, and has worked really hard for this. Yes, that's right. And also Caren Rubin, as our executive director, has been so supportive in terms of this program and the advertising and so forth. And Cody Media, who was just talking there a second ago. This IT work is a lot more complicated than you think, and it came off great tonight, and we really thank you. And of course, our participants tonight: David Long, Carole Herman, Mitch Ostwald, Alan Brodovsky, Michael Ellison, and Caren Rubin. And our prior participants, all three of our involved rabbis, Rabbi Ben Herman, Rabbi Reuven Taff, and Rabbi Lionel Moses, Dr. Mark Blum, Brandon Craig, Geraldine and Cliff Marr from the Medical Society, Lombard Funeral Home, specifically Rebecca Mann and Sarah Miwa, Lynn Brothers Funeral Home with Carla Porter, Home of Peace, Lou Rosenberg, Hever Kadisha, David Varshovsky, Linda Reitzenstein, Judy Lawson, and also the excellent last-minute add-on and excellent knowledge of Edna Stewart, who will for many years be a resource for us for sure. And finally, I'd like to thank the KOH Library and Cultural Center, Dwight Freund, who has been here every day for our seminars, president of KOH, his wonderful bride, Joanne Freund, who is the KOH secretary, Michael Singer, who is the KOH treasurer, and of course, Michael is fully supported by his lovely wife, Betsy, and as I mentioned, Talia Berger, who's the KOH director. As Cantor Rosner mentioned, KOH was founded by Hy Kashenberg, Bill and Shola Ostro, and Michael and Millie Hayward. And I would like to call up Hy Kashenberg, if you can just stay with us for another minute or two more, just for a brief. Yeah, no, come on up here, Hy. Be careful walking around here, but just talking about the KOH and the wonderful resource it is for this community.
That's okay. Firstly, I want to thank all the folks that came here to speak. And I also have to remember Bill Ostro, Michael Hayward. This was a dream. This is a dream. And before the next edifice was even finished, we were already in business. Okay. The only thing is that the fire marshal didn't know about it. And thank God that he didn't know about it. But I just want you folks to know that this is a treasure. It's a treasure because maybe some of us don't know, we are the largest Jewish library in this darn country. Okay, the largest. But we need people to come and take books out, to have activities. And I know Mr. C, we won't go farther than that, has destroyed a lot, no question. But we got to get back on our feet, where people take books out, where people read, get off your computer, come, take those books off, because there isn't a day or a minute or a week that I don't get a call from Mr. Rosenthal or some other guy that he's interested in my welfare and told me that I just won $800,000, okay? And it goes back, actually, I was born and raised in Montreal, and thank you, you're part of the British Empire, sir, so am I. That last week, I got a call from a guy, and his name was Bimo Turovich, street guy that was always on the con. I said, Bimo, how are you doing? He says, Kashi, I don't need a gun anymore. I got a computer, okay? So I would say that we should use that box not as often as we do, really. And as far as Caren is concerned, thank you so much for all the work that you've done. I appreciate all the work. The only thing is I'm going to do things while I'm alive. Okay? When the box goes, forget about it. I ain't coming back. It's a one-way trip. I really believe in folks that are doing what you're doing as volunteers. I want to see more of it. I want to see activities in this library. I want to see that kind of thing get back where parents and grandparents are reading to their relatives. Thank you so much, Dr. Polansky, for you and your lovely wife and all the great things that you do. Thank you very much.
Hi. Hi, if anybody could come back after they've been buried, I'd vote for you first. Right. And I won't announce the amount, but it's a very significant amount that Hai has just contributed to the KOH library for taking our technical work and our media and so forth and AV equipment to the next level. So we're so fortunate to have you as a friend and a donor to this congregation. So for everybody who joined us today, yeah, right. Thank you so much. And we will be sending out in the next week or two a link to YouTube that will have all 3 seminars that you can access. And I will separately be working with Talia and Cody about getting several of the separate talks that I felt were kind of the highlight of the 3 seminars that people can more easily access. And particularly tonight, Caren and Carole, just wonderful, and Mitch. And I mean, we've had such great speakers. So thank you, everybody, and have a good night.